Well, let's go back a few years. Can you recall your first encounter with Larry Hagman?
Yes. I think everybody can. My first encounter with Larry, we were obviously cast in the TV series, and we all met in Burbank, California. We met and we walked into this sort of smallish room, and just so we could all meet each other, know who we were going to work with, and who knew it was going to be 13 years later that we'd all be together. But I walked in the room, and in came, bigger than life, Mr. Hagman with, of course, the cowboy hat on, and over his shoulder he had a sort of a leather saddlebag, beautifully carved and very intricate, and he had it over his shoulder and stuffed with 2 bottles of champagne. And he walked over to me and he said, "Hello, darling."
Which, of course, was the title to his book, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. And so I said to myself, uh-oh, this is going to be a quite interesting time of my life. And, that's how it started. I'll never forget that day. And that was 1978. I had never been in Dallas, Texas in my lifetime. I'd never been in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
So I had no idea what to expect. And I just remember it was very, very flat. And at that time, January 1978, it was very, very cold. And Larry threw all of us in, since he was the only Texan, he put us in this sort of a converted bakery truck. And it was beautiful. He and his wife, Mai, had decorated the inside of this truck. And Larry put us, the entire cast, in the truck, and we drove around, and he would sort of be the tour guide of Dallas, Texas, in the snow.
So Larry basically looked after everybody there.
Yes,
Yeah.
He was actually the hub.
Yeah.
The hub for all of us. He was our support system. He was our tour guide. He was the heart, I think, of the show.
Larry Hagman sends you flowers every year for your birthday, which I think is pretty amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the type of person that Larry was, and what was it like working with him?
Well, need I say more? I mean, yes, he on my birthday, there is the most gorgeous bouquet of flowers. I mean, I think he sent me flowers year 1, so 88, I can't say enough wonderful things about him. He completely took me under his wing, made me feel included. I mean, I could have felt like such an outsider coming onto that set after they'd all been a family for 10 years. And I was included and I was embraced. And Larry would invite me in to have lunch, in his little trailer. And, because the first 3 months that I worked on that show, we were in Dallas. And so we were living in a hotel, and, everything was sort of, foreign and cold and far away from home. And he just made me feel a part of it. And, invited me out to dinner with he and his beautiful wife, Mai, and just made me feel part of it. And that's how I felt the entire time. I was so blessed to work with him. I'm a better person for working with him. It's like a part of my life that, is so special.
Can you remember the first Dallas scene that you filmed?
That's a great question. And I'm not sure if it was the first scene, but I think it was. It was the scene in which it's after JR and Callie have met in the restaurant, and they meet, I think it's behind the restaurant, but it was in the dark of night, and it was sort of this very romantic sort of meeting in the woods scene, and it was so awkward because, it was like, oh my gosh, let's just jump right into this, okay.
Let's do it.
With the age difference and Larry being JR, and it was daunting to say the least. But again, I remember Larry just made me feel really comfortable, and that was sort of like the start of a great run.
Well, let's just speak a little bit more about meeting your co-stars for the first time during the miniseries script run-through. Now, Ken Kercheval told us recently that it was like starting a new school with everyone trying to impress each other. And Steve Kennelly told us that he remembers champagne, lots of champagne from Larry Hagman.
Well, there was maybe 13 years of champagne from Larry Hagman, if you want to get right down to it.
Yeah.
I think every new job is like starting a new school.
Mm.
And a large cast that is basically equally divided in terms of workload, at least in the pilots, you are trying to impress. You're trying to, pick out your territory, what your job is, hold on to your part, that kind of thing. The interesting thing is the two experiences you have, I think, sum up why Dallas was a fun place to work for the rest of our lives, which was, it was the perfect combination of those two things. Larry stopped the competition immediately. He walked into the room literally with his saddlebags full of champagne. And from that moment on, we stopped trying to impress each other, and we realized we were going to have fun. As long as this job lasted, it was going to be a fun job. And Larry was going to be the Pied Piper. And it took all the responsibility off of all of us. Nobody had to try and prove anything anymore. And for 13 years, it was the most enjoyable working experience I think any actor could hope to have. And every actor who co-starred on our show campaigned mightily to become a regular just so they could participate in it. Larry was a fun person to direct you, because he would fall asleep during one of your scenes. And his direction basically was, at the end of the scene, he would come over and look at me and say, "Let's do it again, and this time do it better." And that was it.
What are your memories, Victoria, of Larry Hagman?
The ones you can print? Gosh, I've known Larry since my 20s. Since I moved to California, because I spent so much time in Malibu and lived in Malibu off and on for years, and he lived in Malibu. I have so many memories of Larry. I will tell you this. He is so smart. He is so smart, and he's often so ahead of the curve that he will say something in a very offhand and casual manner, and you'll think, well, that's a little crazy, and then 10 years later you'll think, oh my God, Larry knew that 10 years ago. Wow. He's very perceptive, he's very bright, he's a very honest man, he has a wonderful, loving heart, and he's eccentric and interesting in the most wonderful way.
And had you, Morgan, met any or known any of the Dallas actors prior to winning the Catherine role?
I'm trying to think. Larry Hagman had interviewed me once for a movie.
Really?
Yeah, when I was younger, when I was probably 17 or 18. He interviewed me once. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was the most amazing interview. I think it was at his house. And Larry met me at the front door, and he was wearing a caftan and holding a glass of wine. And he said, "Come in." We sat on the floor, and it was the most amazing afternoon.
I can imagine.
I'm trying to remember what it was even for, and I can't remember, but that was my memory of Larry Hagman.
The two of you actually, you played off each other very, very convincingly on the show. And I'm sure it was always fun working with Larry, a blast every time.
Oh, yes, it was. And we'd try to, we'd out-mean each other, and I used to just, Larry and I would sit in the makeup room sometime, in the morning, and I said, "Oh man, Larry, I'm going to be typecast as the villain for the rest of my life." And he goes, "It could be worse." He said, he kept telling me all about I Dream of Jeannie, and he said, after Jeannie, I couldn't get arrested in this town. I couldn't get a job because people thought that's all I could do was be the character that he played on I Dream of Jeannie. And he said, this came along, and I'm so happy to be a villain. And he said, this is great. And he said, they're the best parts anyway. They are. He said, to play the bad guy is you get to stretch so much as an actor. He says, it's boring being the good guy. And I started thinking about it in a different way and went, he's got a point. And we'd do a lot of scenes together and sitting over a dinner table. And a lot of times I knew the way the makeup artist did my eyes. They did my eyes a particular way. And he used to look at me and he'd forget his line. And he'd just look at my eyes and he'd go, "You've got wolf eyes." He said, "It's freaking me out." And I said, "Larry, concentrate." You know? But we did. We had a really good time together, and a lot of those scenes, I look back on them now, and I think, well, they're a little melodramatic and over the top, but, you know, they were fun.
But when I worked with Larry, we did get to drink a lot of Tapaget.
I can imagine. Larry was good for that.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of Larry, yourself and Larry were often involved in some real cutting, sharp-witted dialogue, and the two of you played off each other very, very well. What are your memories of Larry?
You know, my husband imitates Larry all the time because of the, like you said, the dialogue, right? And he'll say, "Merrily, you're insatiable." That's one of the things that he used to say a lot. You know, Larry was just kind of an easygoing guy. He was fun on the set, and he had a lot of pressure because he was really basically the star of the show, I think. He didn't start out to be, as I'm sure you know. The show was basically about Bobby and Victoria.
Yeah.
And yeah, listen, they have got half the real names and half the character names. But, sometimes things just go that way, and I guess it was a lot more interesting that they went with JR being the bad brother, the bad seed that he was. And then, of course, that lent itself to me, too, because my character then changed. So I'm glad that all came about, to tell you the truth. But Larry was fun, and, he'd do crazy things. I luckily was never one of the butts of his joke.
Himself and Patrick were pretty famous for pulling pranks on set.
You know, they were. Luckily it didn't happen to me. But I remember an episode toward the end of my working. We were in where were we? I want to say a graveyard. And Larry and I were doing his close-up. So, of course, I'm off camera, behind camera doing it. And I had feigned that I dropped my drawers to try to make him laugh because he was supposed to be very serious. He never dropped a line.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I guess he was used to Patrick doing that to him.
Well, probably, yeah. Now, during season 1, you mainly worked with Larry Hagman and Josh Henderson. What are your memories, Kevin, of the great Mr. Hagman in the short time that you got to work with him?
Well, Larry was, widely known as we called the three of them the icons because television star really didn't quite encapsulate kind of what they represented in TV history, but to really get to know these people, and I mean Patrick and Linda as well, just really terrific, powerful personalities. And Larry was sort of the king of that. So he was everything I'm sure everybody has already said about him. He was funny, and he was wise, and he was sharp as a tack to the very end, and just could not have been a better mentor to me. I mean, he helped me nail everything I did because I was, it's like basketball. If you're a basketball player, you play better when you're playing with somebody really good, and he was the Michael Jordan of TV acting.
Sadly, the great Larry Hagman is no longer with us, but what do you think Larry's legacy will be?
Well, Larry, as a man, was bigger than life as well, and he and the character were so intertwined for so many years. And I think that his presence will always be there. He just made such a great impression on the show and in pop culture history that, I think that the character of JR will be forever in the hearts and minds of people in television history. My first scene was a scene in bed with JR.
Okay.
So talk about getting, initiated quickly.
Yeah.
No chance that I could have a nice little talking scene over a dinner table.
Or a drink or something beforehand.
So there I am. Hello, everybody. This is Audrey now. Get into bed. And, everything is all illusion, of course. So, I was wearing a little strapless dress, so my shoulders were bare and the covers were pulled up. And so, of course, you have the illusion of being under the covers and so forth. And Larry gets into the bed wearing belt-buckled jeans, giant cowboy boots, same thing. And, of course, I was quite nervous. And so the director says action, and JR is supposed to lean over and put his arm on my shoulder. Mm-hmm. And he does so with a handful of ice cubes.
Oh, Larry, how could you?
And I, of course, being the ultimate professional, who's always taught never to break focus, tried to keep a straight face and do the scene, ignoring
you poor thing.
it. And everybody was in on the joke, and they were all saying, "Why isn't she reacting? Why isn't she jumping up?"
Oh, that is so funny.
The greatest performance of my life, but we did another take.
Did you work well with Larry Hagman, and did he ever give you any character advice during your time on the show?
Larry was great to work with. He was always fun, and he was always in character, and we always had a blast. He really...
Can you go back and, we'll say, remember your first meeting with Larry way back, and I think it was 1984, and maybe share some memories of your very first scene together?
Yes. Did you hear about this one? Is this why you're asking me?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly how I met him, but I can tell you I had a 3 5/8 page scene, which is quite long to do with him. Mm-hmm. And they had a dialogue coach there named Dwight, who I worked with, and it was our first date. And he took me to Texas Stadium. It was our first date, and I didn't know, whatever. So we're in Texas, right? And it's 5,000 degrees in Dallas in the summer, and I'm in a red wool dress. I get my hair rolled through this scene, I think 5, 6, 7 times. They had to stop and redo my hair because it's so hot. When we were shooting, so it's Texas Stadium, and it's totally empty. He's rented the whole stadium and has people waiting on us. And we have champagne and, was it caviar or some kind of shrimp, something. But it was so hot that the ice kept melting under the caviar or whatever it was, and it kept sinking down in the plate, kabloom. And when I tasted my champagne, like doing the scene where we were rehearsing, it was like, oops, this is real champagne. And I thought, whoa, well, I guess that's how they do it. And so I had to keep, rehearsing, keep doing, and I don't really drink at all. Mm-hmm. And so I kept sipping it, and all of a sudden, Larry kept saying, are you okay? Because I was sliding down in my seat. My bum was getting almost under the table. And finally, the dialogue coach came over, and he said, Deborah, are you all right? And I went, I'm fine. I said, I'm really hot. She said, they're putting real champagne in my glass. He went, oh, my gosh, come over here. And so they had to, perk me up, really get me perked up. And we got to that 3 5/8 page scene. And with me, from then on, every single time we were out, which was almost every scene, they said, and Mandy orders a soft drink. And Mandy orders a soft drink. That's what they always said. Because I was, oh, my goodness, just not doing so well that day. But that was my first time working with him, and he laughed. He thought that was the funniest thing in the whole world. So just, different things like that happened always, and just remarkable, wonderful memories, and I do thank you for taking me through them. It's so lovely.